The latest video game war is heating up tonight. Nintendo's GameCube system is about to hit the stores.
It doesn't have a hard drive. It doesn't play DVDs. So just what does the GameCube do? It plays games, and it plays them well.
Let me introduce you to our new baby.
GameCube will hit the stores in just about 10 days, but it's going to have some stiff competition with Sony PlayStation 2 and Microsoft's new Xbox, also expected to be big hits this year. And one thing you should know, at $200, GameCube is $100 cheaper.
You got the Outsiders, Kevin Nash,
Scott Hall.
and if you get a chance, you need to be watching Gaming Off the Grid.
Don't miss it.
Ever.
It is hard to believe that Generation 6 is 20 years back in the old rear view mirror, and Nintendo faced some really steep competition in this generation.
Yeah, it's crazy that it's 20 years old, first off. This is the generation where Xbox was introduced, and Sony's second console came out, the PS2, which did incredible.
Yeah.
The GameCube is 20 years old this year, which is absolutely insane. Like, I feel old saying that.
Yeah, it is wild. You know, the GameCube sold, I think, right around 22 million units. The console that sold the least, but it was also available the least, the Dreamcast sold 9, Xbox slightly. Microsoft's first console slightly edged out the GameCube, and then the PS2 just mopped the floor with every other console. But the reason I wanted to bring up sales is it's ironic, because sales sometimes in any realm can be very misleading in the sense that the GameCube is arguably, I think, the most sought-after console from this generation. It is highest collected, and the prices are the highest. And some may say, well, that's supply and demand. I don't necessarily think that's all it attributes to that.
I think it has to do a lot of with nostalgia. It has to do with Nintendo's name. We've been doing a lot of these comparing prices videos, you know, GameCube to Xbox, PS2 to Xbox, and it's just absolutely insane seeing the price differences for the same games that are cross-platforms.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and I think that you point out nostalgia is a huge piece, because if it was supply and demand, original Xbox games would be closer in proximity in price to the GameCube.
Yeah.
And they're not. They're actually, in a lot of cases, cheaper than every console in the generation. So, but I also don't think sales is a good barometer of quality. I think, you know, there's tons of movies that maybe didn't perform well and things like that, but I kind of want to dig into, why do we think the GameCube had it rough back in 2001 or the early aughts? Why didn't it perform so well? Why did it not perform as good as the Nintendo 64? And then maybe why are people circling back to it, you know, in 2021?
I think the first reason, and these are all just opinions, and we don't know for sure, but I think people that grew up with Nintendo wasn't, like, cool anymore. Because I remember, like, being a kid and playing NES, and I was like, this is awesome. And then when Gen 6 came around, I had a PS2, and the GameCube, in my head, seemed little kiddie.
Yeah,
It seemed like it was weird.
Mario can't do it alone. He'll spray his water to fly around and clean the sludge that's on the ground.
'Cause clean is better than dirty, and dirty's meaner than clean.
Super Mario Sunshine, only for Nintendo GameCube. Rated E for everyone.
What the hell was that? I think that proves my point.
I'm totally with you. I grew up with the NES, didn't get a Super Nintendo till way late in the game. Then I got an N64, and I wanted a PS2 so bad. I was kind of past Nintendo at that point. I remember coming home from school one day, and my brother had been sick, and he got a Nintendo GameCube, and being like, yes, now he's not going to want to play my PS2. Like,
it was distraction.
I didn't even care, you know? And it's weird. I think that Nintendo's core fan base had graduated. They had moved on to wanting to play Grand Theft Auto. Mario and Princess weren't as cool as a pile of blow and hookers in Grand Theft Auto. I think that was really what was going on there, which I think had a huge impact on Nintendo, because now they are trying to reach new fans, and they were kind of formulating a lot of new stuff at this time. Pokemon was thriving, so I think it was up against that battle. I also think it was very heavily reliant on first party titles. I know that it was, and it had lost its ace in the hole. It lost its partnership with Rare, which I think really hurt them in this generation.
Because on the N64, Rare is what pushed N64. Think about your favorite N64 game. 8 out of 10 times it's going to be a Rare game. Like, the Rare games on the N64 are amazing.
The N64 was carried 100% by first party Nintendo titles and Rare titles.
And then in this generation, Rare went over to Xbox, which is just like, ooh, brother versus brother. That sucks. And then, I don't know if this is true or not, but I think struggled with the sales of the GameCube is that they decided to launch the GameCube with not a Mario game. I feel like that was another weird thing that they did. I'm not saying that Luigi's Mansion is a bad game at all.
We love that game.
Yeah, I love that game. But for being, like, Mario is like your crown jewel. And then you release this game where you have to rescue Mario. They did so many weird things which made it do terrible.
Yeah, and I think if you wanted to maybe not launch with Mario, Ocarina of Time did just as much for the N64 that I think Mario 64 did. So you could have launched with a Zelda game if you wanted to be different. But going with Luigi in an atypical type of game, which again, we love the game.
Amazing.
I just don't know that it was for the masses the best choice of your main launch title. There were others, but that was really the one that Nintendo was pushing on the console at the time. I also think, and it's weird to say this in 2021, but I think a big misstep for Nintendo in this generation was the lack of a DVD player.
Yeah, because the Xbox and the PS2, not only could you watch movies, you could listen to CDs on them, you could do all this cool stuff. It was like a multimedia console. Now, I will say the GameCube does offer cool things that the Xbox and PS2 doesn't, like the Game Boy player, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And someone's going to be like, well, there is versions that play DVDs, the Panasonic. But good luck finding that. You know what I mean? That was super rare. I don't know why they did it. And then the discs are this big. They do normal discs. It's weird.
Yeah, I think that that DVD player thing, it seems like laughable now, but there are so many kids that the first DVD player they had in their room was their PS2.
Yeah.
And it was a huge deal at the time, a misstep by Nintendo. And then Gen 6, I don't think was predicated on online gameplay. That really, I feel like, was a necessity for Generation 7.
Yes.
But the online connectivity for the GameCube was lackluster at best. You had to buy an adapter. There weren't a ton of games that allowed you to play that way. It wasn't the online experience that Xbox Live provided. And then the free, online play with the PS2, and that was a big deal back then.
It was a super big deal because that was like, oh my god, I can play online with friends? Like, that's... Looking back, it's weird because that's like the normal thing now, but like, that was really cool. And then the GameCube just... It was there, but I never thought when I was growing up that the GameCube even offered online.
Yeah.
I knew, because I had a PS2, I knew the PS2 did, but I was like, okay, the GameCube doesn't.
Yeah, it was very odd. It may sound to this point, it's 20th birthday and we're just kind of taking shots at the GameCube. That is our assessment of why we think it struggled in the moment.
Yes.
But to its credit, to its greatness, I think this console has lived on way better than some of the other consoles from the generation. The GameCube is like one of the most sought after consoles from Generation 6. So many people want it. The prices of games are insane. And I'm not saying the other consoles from the generation aren't wanted as well. I think nostalgia across Generation 6 is
it's high because all the people that played it growing up are now adults with disposable income.
But why a console that was second to last in sales is like the kingpin of the collector's market in Generation 6, I think there's a lot of things at work. I got a GameCube, my first own GameCube, when I was in college. I kind of knew that, like, I need to have one of these. There's a lot of games I missed that I wanted to play, but when my brother had it growing up, I didn't care. Helped him beat some games, but I didn't play it a ton. I think that youth we talked about who chose to move forward and go play the Grand Theft Autos and the Halos and
Go
was
do
like,
hooker and blow.
yeah, I'm over Nintendo. Nostalgia always wins. I feel like it's a cyclical thing, and they got their nostalgia bite in their mid-20s, early 30s for Nintendo, and they're like, man, there's all these Nintendo games I bypassed. I want to go back and play.
Amazing games that are staples now.
Yeah.
You know?
Coupled with the fact that there were a good chunk of kids that were newer Nintendo fans playing the GameCube, because it did feel like a kiddish console, so kids were getting it. They wanted it again. So that's why I think you see this nostalgic folks who missed it that were too cool for Nintendo, but then when they're, getting a little older, nostalgia come around, they're like, oh, I kind of like Nintendo again. I want to play some more Nintendo stuff. And then you have the kids that grew up with it that are after it. I also think there is an element at work here that this was Nintendo's last traditional console.
That is crazy to think about.
Yeah.
So, the GameCube, straightforward gaming.
Yeah.
Guess what console comes after the GameCube? This guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Wii. And then the Wii U, and then the Switch. So I feel like Nintendo made a weird decision during this generation to kind of, instead of console wars, they were like, we're going to do our own thing after this. I think they were like, let's see how the GameCube does. It didn't do very well comparatively to the PS2. Obviously, it was close to the Xbox. But after that, they were like, now there's no way we can compete with Sony and Xbox. They're going to battle it out. Let's do freaking weird stuff.
Yeah.
And that's what they did.
I think you're right. I think they were like, we're not going to get in this arms race of who has the biggest, baddest, and greatest graphics and the most powerful machine, because that is short-lived. You're only going to be the baddest dad on the block until the next sexy dad moves onto the block, right? That's how it works. So I think they knew that, and they wanted to focus on their IPs. They wanted to focus on their innovation. They wanted to focus on the family gaming. And more than that, I feel like Nintendo dedicated their mission to evolving the way we play video games.
Ooh.
It's time to change the way we play video games. So here come motion controls. Here comes the tablet integrated with a console with the Wii U. Now we've got the mobile, half home console Nintendo Switch. They wanted to change the game. I think the long play for them was, we're going to work on our IPs. We're going to change how people play games and endear our customers into our brand and let the other guys duke it out over horsepower.
It is kind of weird starting at the GameCube and going to the Wii and all this stuff. When you look at the way they perform, the power, I feel like Nintendo's consoles are a generation behind in power.
For sure.
It's so weird. HDMI was late to be introduced.
Yeah.
Because the Wii, I don't think it had HDMI, but
No,
then
Wii, yeah, you're right.
The PS3 and the Xbox 360 did, and it's just they're a generation behind, but that doesn't seem to matter for Nintendo. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, and it the Wii, it's been kind of every other, right? The Wii crushed it. The Wii U didn't. Now the Switch is a hammer. And I don't know that the Switch is going to maybe outsell the PS4. It very well could, but the PS4 really did well this generation. But I think there's an element of the no updates, the simplicity of the GameCube,
Yes.
knowing it's the last Nintendo console that I can just kind of really play the traditional way. It was just a shift after that. It was a moment in time where that is the last console Nintendo attempted to compete graphically with everyone and be just a traditional gaming console. And I think people really respect it for that and want to go back and play it.
Speaking of playing it, the GameCube controller is one of the best controllers out of Gen 6
Yeah.
and then out of just everything.
Yeah.
So I don't get why the GameCube didn't do better than it did, because I feel like once you got your hands on that controller, you were like, okay, now I want this. This is how I want a game. It just form-fitted. They even are releasing GameCube controllers on the Switch. That's how important this controller is for a console that was third in the generation.
Yeah, and if anybody's wondering, there's a ton of things we covered in our GameCube buying guide video. So
Yes.
if you want to hear more about the controllers, the color variants, what type of consoles, what type of games we recommend you getting,
accessories.
check that little guy out up there. But this is more just kind of celebrating the 20-year life cycle, and it's a very unique journey. I'm trying to think of another one that mimics it, where it was one of the worst performing and one of the most then sought after in a relatively short amount of time.
I can't think of any that are like the GameCube, because the GameCube is so hot right now.
Yeah.
It's insanely. It's kind of makes me sick how some expensive.
Yeah.
But it did bad.
I think there's also an element that this is not a tough generation to go back to. This is not a generation where you had to be there to go back and enjoy it. You know, there's a ton of fans of the PS1 and the N64 and the Sega Saturn, but those are generations, in my humble opinion, you had to be there. Yeah. It's really hard to drag somebody back to GoldenEye and be like, dude, this was the best game at the time.
And I feel like this generation, you don't have to have justifiers. I feel like the generation prior, you're going to have like all these justifiers like, oh, dude, this was so cool back in the day, or like, for the time.
Yeah,
and
you got to think of what it did for gaming.
Yeah, all these like points. For Generation 6, you don't have to say anything. You just put in Mario Strikers. It speaks for itself.
Fun will be had. Yeah, I think it's an easy generation to revisit. I think the GameCube's an exceptionally easy console to revisit, with the exception of how much it costs. So we maybe already kind of touched on it, but what was your journey with the GameCube? Like, when was the first time you seen one? Did you have any interest in it? And when did you decide or get to an age where you're like, I actually love that console?
So it's weird because I was a PS2 kid. Most of my block was a PS2 kid. The neighbors of the street were Xbox kids, hardcore. They loved Halo. But my one neighbor had a GameCube. And like I said, dude, I thought it was so kiddie. Because Nintendo, family, all this sunshine, beautiful colors.
Clean is better than dirty, and dirty's meaner than clean.
I just want to play James Bond on my PS2 and then Grand Theft Auto. Like all this like spies, hookers.
Because you were becoming a man, dude.
I was becoming a young man that probably was too young playing it because I had to play Grand Theft Auto when my parents were not watching.
Yeah.
But I remember my neighbor had a GameCube, and they had Mario Strikers. This is what I mean, they probably had a lot of other games, but I remember doing 2v2 Mario Strikers and having the funnest time I've ever had. Like, I remember we were playing in my friend's bedroom, and we were screaming. It was like summer vacation, screaming when people would score goals. That's like what I love that memory, and that would make me kind of be like, oh, the GameCube's awesome. But then after that experience, I never really had interest. Like, I was like, this is cool, my neighbor has it, I'll play it when I play it. I'm just going to stick with the PS2. And then I went to 360. So I never really had this, like, thing where I was like, oh, the GameCube's cool, till, like, my mid-20s. Like, way late.
Yeah.
And I, like, go back and I'm like, oh my god, I missed so many great games. So many. Because the only game I really played on the GameCube was Strike.
Yeah.
Which is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Play it. It's the best soccer game you've ever played. But it's so weird how I had no interest at all. And now I'm like, head over heels for it.
Yeah, it was unique because I had very little interest in it. And to be quite honest, my brother had very few games that moved the needle for me at the time. I thought Mario Sunshine looked amazing.
Oh, yeah. Beautiful.
I thought Luigi's Mansion was badass. He did have Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes, which I did beat back in the day. I think I said earlier in the episode I didn't beat any games back then other than helping him. I did beat that one. But it was like my freshman or sophomore year in college. I remember I went and I got a black GameCube, and I got a good chunk of the games that are in our collection. I know I got Thousand Year Door that day. I got Twin Snakes that day. All at GameStop or Gamers. I think there was a store called Gamers back
with a
then.
Z.
Yeah,
I remember Gamers.
I think it was there, and I got like really good deals. I might even have receipts still in the packages. I need to look, but and at that point, I was like, "This is amazing." I hadn't played enough of in the moment, like the Mario Karts and the Smash Bros, and I was like, "This stuff is next level." Like, just dust the shit out of the N64 versions.
Yeah.
And I think you touched on something with your excitement and passion about Strikers 2v2, is this was kind of the swan song for dedicated 4-player couch co-op gaming.
Whoa.
You could still do it on a lot of other consoles, but when you put 4 controller ports on the front of it and you build the games like they build them, it was designed to bring folks together.
It was that. I mean, that's the whole point of Nintendo, was to bring the family together. That's why I thought it was kiddie and family, because that's what it was. It freaking had a handle on it, so you could take it over to a friend's house and do 4-player.
Maybe Nintendo's actual first portable console.
Whoa,
I'm just saying, they were thinking.
There was a handle on it for a reason.
Yeah.
And it's not just to be a purse. But I feel like this generation, just in general, is kind of a swan song of like couch co-op gaming.
Yeah.
The Xbox 4 controller ports. I know the PS2 only has 2, but the multi-tap.
Yeah.
The Dreamcast has 4 controller ports.
Yep.
Like, this was the time, because the next generation was online. Dude, the GameCube, I have limited experience playing it back in the day, but that's what it did.
Yeah.
It brought people together, and we had a blast, and it was amazing.
Yeah.
I'll never forget that moment. Just freaking screaming.
Yeah, and ever since, I got back into it, when I picked one up when I was in college, it's always been a console that I pick up a good, solid 1 to 3 to 4 to 5 games a year, depending on what I find. Back, 2008, 2009, 2010, 11, 12 range, I would get a lot from game stores. I'd go in and they'd be like, oh yeah, it's $10, and oh, that's $12, I'll pick that up. In modern times, though, it's really been if I find one of the garage sale or thrift store and I, sell 3 or 4 of them and keep the one that I really want. But it is one of my favorite consoles to go back and play from this generation. And I'm at a point right now where I couldn't tell you from this generation which console I love more. I would probably lean towards the PS2.
Yes.
But we've been collecting hard for the Xbox. We love the Dreamcast. We love the GameCube.
This is a tough generation. I think I lean towards PS2 the most because that's what I had as a kid and played it for years. And I still have my original. But then going back and revisiting the Xbox and the GameCube, it's just this generation had amazing games.
Oh.
Just you pick any console and you'll be phenomenal games.
There are consoles that I really love from a multitude of generations, but holistically, this has to be the best generation in gaming.
Oh,
I
hands
think
down.
ever.
It's
really do.
Phenomenal. It's just crazy that it's 20 years old and it's still so much fun to go back and play and collect for and all this stuff. I mean, collecting for the GameCube might not be fun because it's expensive, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, the GameCube was just it was unique. I think Nintendo knew right out of the gate that they made it maybe a little too childish, because if you go back and watch some of their commercials, which by now you've probably seen a few of them roll through this episode, they were trying so hard to make it seem edgy.
Dude, yeah, their commercials were so weird.
Yeah.
Just boxes. But then when you put the game in, it's all these bright colors. It's all this happy-go-lucky times. And then the PS2 and the Xbox are these dark colors. It's just crazy comparing the two,
It was definitely Nintendo's this is our only way to compete with that target market that those consoles are going after, is to make our console seem more badass. And badass, I don't mean from a performance standpoint, just grr, I'm manly, let's go.
Commercials are kind of freaky for the game.
Yeah. So anyways, it's been an amazing run, one of the most unique runs for a console that I can think of. I can't really recall a console that was a dog and then is outperforming all the other consoles from its respective generation. And I'm not talking about even the prices of the games holistically. There are just more people, it feels like, chasing down GameCube stuff, and they want a GameCube.
That's because it's so good. And I don't know why. I wish I would have gotten into it as a kid.
Yeah.
I wish I would have been hey, you're a kid, so freaking it's a kid console.
Yeah.
Play it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know why I was calling it kiddish, because 20 years ago I was a kid. You know?
And you just watch some of the other things I think about of what was the first HDMI type dongle-ish type things that third-party companies started making to get this stuff on modern TVs, and they were working hard on GameCube, and now everything has it. But there is such a weird buzz around the GameCube.
Kind of a cult.
Yeah,
it has a cult following, which is. That's crazy to think, because it's Nintendo cult.
Yeah.
Ooh. But
it reminds me literally of that indie band that nobody gave two shits about except for the skater kids and the punk kids and whatever. And then 20, 30 years later, everyone is that is one of the best bands of all time.
Yeah, people have tattoos of them. People are collecting the 20-year anniversary albums. And it's dude, I didn't see you at any shows back then.
I my mind kind of goes to a band, kind of like the Pixies, which never had super commercial success, and then they go on a reunion tour and they're packing out arenas. It's
whoa.
You didn't know how good you had it in the moment, and then when it's not there anymore, you're oh yeah, we should have paid attention to them. Should have paid attention to the old GameCube.
Guys, the GameCube is 20 years old.
Yeah, we're getting old, buddy.
We are getting old, but it also is exciting.
Yeah,
because I love it now. And I freaking play it all the time.
Yeah.
So many amazing games. I'm always discovering new games because of Retro Wolf 88.
Yeah.
He's always showcasing all these great games that I missed.
Yeah, if you guys want an expert on the GameCube, go check out Matt at Retro Wolf 88. That guy has a complete GameCube collection. He knows way more about the console than we do. We're just casuals, bud. Yeah, but
speaking of casuals, let's talk about this beer.
I thought you were gonna say let's talk about Captain Algebra.
Oh, that would have been good, because he gave us this beer.
Yeah.
Age of Leviathans by Surly. That's one of the hardest words I've ever said.
I like hearing you say it, dude. It kind of gets me in the mood.
Ooh, Leviathans. ASMR. This is a stout with ruby chocolate, raspberry, lactose, and vanilla vast, rich, deep. Comes in at 11.9%.
This is a banger.
Holy crap. What do you think?
Well, first off, my first thought when you were going through that is, what the hell is Ruby chocolate? Is it like a brand, a style?
I think that's just like a sexy chocolate.
Yeah, I don't know. But I do know this stout is really good. It's a very unique mouthfeel because it's a little on the thin side, I feel like.
It's very thin.
But
for
it's
being almost 12%.
But you also get this sweet, like a thin, sugary cream. And there's some raspberry that comes through. I think you get the little bit of the whiskey burn on the finish, and that's when kind of that dark chocolate comes in, or ruby chocolate, comes in on the finish. The lasting flavor is a very raspberry dark chocolate type taste.
This is really good, but it's crazy how thin the flavor profile is for being such a high percentage. This beer has a really good raspberry aroma.
Yeah.
Like it's really creamy because of that lactose, milky. This beer is really good, and this beer is really dangerous.
Yeah. Which,
it's an easy drinker.
Age of Leviathans. I mean,
yeah, and that, I think, if my knowledge is correct, that's the first demon to fight God in mythology,
some
or
biblical
something
thing,
like
yeah.
that, which is kind of cool and kind of freaky.
It's a monster. Dude.
Yeah, I typed it into Google and I saw some terrifying images. So I'm gonna need this to go to sleep.
All right, guys, happy birthday to the GameCube. 20 years. We just got the announcement that the Switch Online is adding the N64. It's adding the Sega Genesis, which is going to be badass.
Oh, that's gonna be really cool.
But we got to get the GameCube on there. We got to get some GameCube love during the months of September or through November, and for the rest of your life. Find some time to just enjoy the GameCube and celebrate it.
Yeah, and I highly recommend doing 1v1 or 2v2 Mario Strikers. I cannot stress that enough. I know I've talked about it a lot this episode, but it is literally one of the best sports games.
It is, and I'm going to do an honorable mention here that was not in our GameCube episode. Mario Strikers is going to run you a little bit of money. This game isn't, and this game is badass if you like playing multiplayer sports games. Beach Spikers volleyball
by Sega. If you love cheesy, ridiculous, like arcade style games,
it's amazing. Check it out. Happy 20th birthday, Nintendo GameCube. You have our blessing. Have a beer on your birthday. And we're gonna go play some GameCube. We always appreciate you guys tuning in and subscribing to the channel. And we'll see you next time, right here on Gaming Off the Grid. Believe it or not, this year in 2021, the Nintendo GameCube farts. And we're gonna go play some GameCube. We always appreciate you guys tuning in and subscribing to the channel. Keep gaming. What the fuck am I? Is that what we used to say?
Keep GameCube. Right?
Yeah. Okay.
Is that what we used to say?
What are we drinking
today?
We're
drinking Age of Leviathans. I got it. Leviathans.
What are we drinking
today?
Today
We're drinking Age of Leviathans.
Of the violins.
This word is like the hardest.
Violin. Leviathan.
Leviathans. It's the hardest word I've ever said.
Yeah, I was at that point, I was born a woman.
Whoa, we got some explaining to do.
Oop. Spilled the beans.
Age of Leviathans by Surly. This is a stout brewed with raspberry. There's raspberry in it. I don't know why I stopped. Fuck. Ruby chocolate.